Good evening. The November election is just a little over a month away, and early voting begins in just a little over a week. So in order to better inform the local voters, Connersville City TV Channel 3 and the Connersville News Examiner are again cooperating to bring you a candidates forum to allow you to learn a little more about the candidates that are seeking your votes in November. I'm Daryl Smith, reporter with the Connersville News Examiner. Voters will be asked to cast votes for several offices in November. Early voting begins October 7th and will continue daily here at the Fayette County Government Center, Conference Room B, Monday through Friday, and also on a couple of Saturdays just before the election. October 6th is the last day to register to vote for this election, so be sure that you're registered to vote. Tonight we'll be hearing from candidates for Fayette County Superior Judge, Prosecutor, Auditor, and Recorder. Tomorrow night we will learn more about candidates for Sheriff, Commissioner District 1, Council Districts 1, 3, and 4, and Fayette County School Board District 4. Council District 2, with Dale Strong as an incumbent, is unopposed, and School Board District 3, where you can vote for two candidates, Chris Hunt and Warren Taylor, are unopposed. The candidate forum tonight will include an opening statement by each of the candidates, 2 or 3 questions, and then a closing statement by the candidates. The first up tonight, we have candidates for Fayette County Prosecutor. And we have Democratic candidate John Bodwell on my right. And, he's a local attorney, longtime local attorney here in Connersville. And Chief Deputy Prosecutor Betty Jones is on my left. And they're both seeking to replace Ken Fall, who chose not to seek re-election after serving 2 terms in office. So, Betty, you were here first tonight, so I guess that's the punishment for coming early. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Daryl, my name is Betty Jones. I want to thank you, the News Examiner, and Channel 3 for having us here tonight and for tomorrow, because I think it's really important that the voters become more informed. I've been your Chief Deputy Prosecutor for nearly 12 years, and I handle the major felony cases. Those are cases like murder, child molesting, sex crimes, burglaries, drug dealing, and meth labs. I'm the daughter of Robbie Worthy and the late Ray Friend, and they raised me in Fayette County, teaching me Fayette County values. I've worked hard for our hometown for many years because I've raised my sons here too, and I want to try to make it a better place to live and work. Now I need your vote for prosecutor so I can continue to battle to make this community safe for your family and for mine.
John.
Well, thank you, Daryl. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And Betty, it's good to see you, of course. And I wish also to thank the News Examiner and Channel 3. And this is an opportunity for me to present a little bit about myself. However, I've been in the community now for almost 43 years. I've been practicing law the entire time with John D. Baker, practicing attorney here in Connersville, Indiana. And the reason why I came here was I was born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I graduated from Bloomington, Indiana University in the School of Business and acquired a BS degree, and then went on to law school at the same university and acquired a Juris Doctorate degree. And upon finishing school, I came directly to Connersville, Indiana after interviewing with several companies throughout the nation. However, I wanted to give myself a chance to find a home, a small community in which I could become a part of it and also enjoy the fine community public relations that you have with the people and various other things that happen in a smaller town. I have practiced law here, as I said, for over 42 and a half years, and I have been the Chief Deputy Prosecutor, as Betty Jones is now, from 1972 to 1978. I handled over 1,000 cases a year and did both courts, circuit and superior court, and had serious felony cases, including murder and various other matters. Also, during this period of time, I've been the Connersville and Fayette County School Board Attorney for approximately 25 years. Also, the Board of Aviation Commissioners Attorney for 40 years, and the Housing Authority Attorney in our local community, and also what we call the old Welfare Department Attorney for approximately 10 years. So I've had numerous experiences in the community, and I've enjoyed all of them. And as now a senior citizen, I wish to give back to my community a little bit, since I was successful in practicing law all these years, and this is the reason why I'm running for prosecuting attorney.
Thank you, John. So we'll get right into the questions, and it'll be your turn to go first. Well, tell me a little bit about your philosophy on offering plea agreements to the defendants. How do you weigh saving cases from dragging on in the court system and possible expensive jury trials, and making sure that those who are charged receive justice?
Well, I think what you have to look at today, Darrell, is there's so many cases coming into both courts that our justice system is very crowded. And I think alternative sentencing sometimes will work. We have a community corrections staff here that will handle cases during a work release program if necessary, so we can get something back from sentences. If someone pleads guilty pursuant to a plea bargain, we sometimes offer that, and I know Ms. Jones has offered that on several occasions. Also, we have to look at the important cases. You can only try, theoretically, 52 cases a year in one court. There's only 52 weeks, and we have many, many more cases than that. So you have to work out some alternatives. And that is what we try to do when you, as a prosecutor or a deputy prosecutor, make offers to resolve these matters.
Betty.
Well, as we all know, and I agree with John on many of his points, it's not possible to try every case that's filed. I wish it were, because that would mean crime's down, but it's not. We file, in just A, B, and C felonies, the old major felony category, we file about 250 cases a year or more, and we couldn't possibly try them all. Now, with that being said, plea bargaining is certainly a way to use alternative sentencing, and we do. We offer the community corrections programs, home detention, work release, especially for those people who aren't violent offenders and who don't pose a further risk to the community and who need to be working and paying for the needs of their family, and also helping to pay for the costs of their own incarceration. But the truth is, not everybody fits into that category. And sometimes people continue to offend, and they get to the point where they don't really have much to lose by going to trial. And those are the cases that we most often have to take to trial. And those are people like the shooter that ran into Lee Street and shot up somebody's home over drugs, or the child molester who targeted 2 more kids in our community. And we're going to try those cases when we have to do it, and that will require some taxpayer money. But that's the cost of having a safer community. And we try to safeguard those costs when at all possible and work out cases in a manner that we can all live with.
How will the changes in the criminal code by the state legislature over the past 2 years affect how your office does its job? And one of the concerns I know that sheriffs across the state have is that there'll be a lot of what was the old D felonies be returning to the county. How do you deal with that to make sure, again, that justice is served? And also, are those new felony levels, are they strict enough and tough enough to serve justice?
You know, back in the 1970s, Darrell, they rewrote the criminal code. And when they did, the same questions were asked. The very same questions. Are the penalties strict enough? Are they strict enough in the right areas? And at the time, the legislators thought that they were, and people seemed satisfied with it. But as the years went by, society changed. Heroin, drug dealing, prescription drug problems became more of a problem and caused a different kind of criminal society. Now, having said that, I think the magic question is, what's it going to mean for counties? And we can't really predict that. But I can tell you that Fayette County is ahead of this game. We've had a community corrections department for many years, and we've used that department, and we've obtained grants to be able to expand the department. They have their own building now with lots of bed space, and they even take offenders from other communities. So we are ahead of the game as opposed to other counties that don't have those facilities and are going to have to come up with them, because it is going to cost more to deal with the misdemeanors on the local level. But we have to look to those avenues and use those resources that we have. And we will continue to work with community corrections and the judges and allow defendants that kind of sentencing when it's appropriate for them.
John.
I believe that we're making the best possible effort we can as far as what's affordable. Our community obviously has a problem with a criminal individual wherein we have no place to put many of them. There's just too many. And as a result, our jail is full most of the time. Now, of course, community corrections has really helped it out a lot. But these people must meet those qualifications financially. And our problem is to get these people financially to pay for their incarceration. That is the main objective of alternative sentencing. Now, of course, you need to understand, and I think the public knows, that we are suffering locally as far as employment. And as this continues to become a problem for our community, we, as alternative sentencing takes place, we don't have the room to incarcerate everybody. So we have to look towards maybe drug rehabilitation, in-house counseling, this sort of thing. And this is where the prosecutor's office has had a problem in the past, because where do you send all of these people for appropriate incarceration?
We had a situation, one of my jobs is put in the court news weekly, and also the arrest reports and such. We had a case where someone was sentenced, I think like 3 weeks ago, and then showed up on the arrest report again. How do, the public sees that the same names keep showing up in the arrest report or in the sentencing report. How do we stop that? How do we break that cycle?
Well, I think
how does your office do that?
I think the prosecutor's office can break that cycle pretty easily. A repeat offender is going to have a different determination as far as his sentence. And I think that's going on now with the prosecutor's office, and that would continue to be the same if I became the elected prosecutor. But those people that have a record, we need to take more due consideration of what does this person need to be successful in our community. If he's not going to be successful, do we send him away to some prison? We have to make a determination on that. Also, his educational background, his ability to work, whether or not he is on public assistance, whether or not he's on disability, all of these things have to be included in the entire package that we realize that something needs to be done for this person.
Betty.
Well, I agree with John that we certainly are looking at those factors and doing our best. And I appreciate his recognizing that my office does a good job of trying to deal with repeat offenders. Unfortunately, the final decisions don't always end with us, and there's always the possibility that judges don't see it as we do. But we do try to take a firmer stance on repeat offenders. Now, as far as looking at people based upon whether they receive assistance or whether they receive disability, I don't agree with John on that. You see, I believe that in our justice system, regardless of ability or means, that everyone should be treated fairly. So we strive to do that and to look at each person and what they did and make their punishment and their sentence relate to other people in like circumstances, no matter how much money they make, no matter what families they come from. We don't see any distinguishing characteristics there. We try just to treat everyone as fair as possible and still seek justice for the community and for individual victims.
Well, you have one last chance to look in the camera and request the voters' vote. So, Betty?
Thank you. Again, thank you all so much for having us here. Channel 3, the News Examiner, and of course, Daryl Smith, who's always in our community helping with projects. We appreciate this opportunity to connect with your viewers and voters throughout the county. Now, through this campaign, whether I've been at the fair where I've talked to so many of you, or to the community dinners where I've had the chance to share a meal with some of you that I wouldn't otherwise have had, and to the front doors that I've visited, I've learned that our community understands that drugs are the root cause of many crimes. Many of our citizens have turned to drugs and then turned to stealing from us to buy more drugs. They lose sight of what's really important, the real priorities in their lives, and children end up abused and neglected. Some become dealers to support their habits and bring more of this poison into our community. Sometimes dealers from other communities have moved here to prey on our addicts. One of them went into a home on Lee Street with a gun and opened fire. Every person in that area was put in danger that day, as well as every passerby and every person in a home that he chose for his getaway path. Today, that shooter is just beginning to serve a 78-year sentence. And in one drug user's home, an out-of-town child molester moved in and Fayette County children became his targets and his prey. Today, he was sentenced to 85 years. These are just two recent examples. For the past almost 12 years, I have assisted law enforcement in attacking the problems that drugs cause for our community. We've worked aggressively and as a team to remove drugs from our streets. And when drug dealing arrests have gone up, the sheriff has noticed that property crime has gone down. If you agree that removing drugs from our streets is important to keeping our community safe, I need your vote. If elected, I will be appointing Ken Faw to be my chief deputy, and we will continue our efforts to make our community safer for your family and for mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. John?
Well, on behalf of the local television station and the forum and, of course, the newspaper, I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have been in our community for a number of years. As a senior citizen, I believe that we can continue to improve our community as far as our relationship with our youth. The problem, I see it as a individual who has lived here for so many years, is that we are not spending enough time in trying to make sure that the students and the children of our community are acquiring an excellent education as far as attendance, and this is where I am planning on making a supreme effort if elected prosecutor. These parents that do not provide the education necessary to get their kids to school and to be accountable for those children must receive an appropriate education of the laws in the state of Indiana. We have failed our children in that regard, many of them, and they become a statistic in our local community, a criminal statistic, because those children that come to grade school, you can usually find that and pick those that are having difficulties and their homes are either broken or there's no one accountable in the home. And my primary objective is to form a committee of administration and also the principals and come up with a plan to assure that these children do not become a criminal statistic. And as a result, they would avoid becoming out on the street, becoming a criminal, and then becoming a drug abuser. As a cross-section of the community that I have served, I find that we have a strong, very strong community base, but we need to do more. And I feel like from my experience in all phases of the community that I can be a successful prosecutor in weighing and working with the attorneys, the judges, and the public. And if so elected, my door as a prosecuting attorney will be open for anyone that needs to discuss a criminal matter. So I am pleased very much to be here this evening, and thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you again, Betty.
Thank you.
There'll be some other elections on the ballot that we will be talking to here in this candidate forum. One of those will be U.S. Representative. We have incumbent Republican Luke Messer, who is being challenged by Democrat Susan Hall Heinzman. We also have a state senator candidate for those of you in Waterloo Township. That would be Jeff Ratz, a Republican, taking on Democrat Jerome Jake Hoog. Longtime Senator Alan Paul of Richmond chose not to seek re-election, so that will be an open seat. And just those in Waterloo Township. The rest of you still have Senator Lysing, and she will be on the ballot in 2 years. So we thank you too, and we'll be back in just a moment. And we're back again with candidates for Fayette County Recorder. We have Democratic candidate Sandy McQuinley, get my lips moving, and Republican Ruth Nutty. And so we welcome you two tonight to our forum. And so if you would like to introduce yourself to the voters, please, let's go with Ruth first.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank TV3 and the News Examiner for hosting this event this evening. Most of all, I would like to thank our viewers for tuning in to educate yourself on the issues that the candidates have to present. And I hope that tonight will be educational for you. My name is Ruth Nutty. My husband David and I are lifelong residents of Fayette County, and I am seeking the office of Fayette County Recorder. I bring 24 years of government service to the table. I served one term as deputy to the Harrison Township Assessor, Mary Lou Rogers. Then I was elected for 3 terms to serve as Harrison Township Assessor. In 2007, I began working as elections deputy for then clerk Ann Frost. And currently, I work for the Connersville Township trustee, Kathy Harvey, serving as investigator. And as you have heard earlier this evening, our current recorder, Ann Frost, is retiring at the end of this term, which leaves that seat open. But I want to assure you that as recorder, I would continue to provide to you the same courteous, efficient service you've come to know from that office. Friendly, efficient service is what you'll get as Ruth Nutty as your next Fayette County Recorder. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Sandy?
Okay, thank you. I would also like to thank you for having us this evening. My name is Sandy McQuinley, and I'm running for County Recorder. My husband is Jim McQuinley. We have one son, Daniel, who attends IU East in Richmond, majoring in biochemistry. I have worked in county government for several years. I've worked in the clerk's office, auditor's office, and assessor's office. Having worked in conjunction with the recorder's office, I am totally knowledgeable of all the duties and responsibilities of that office. My experience has proven my competence in government and over the years. I would like to take this time to ask you to vote for the most qualified candidate, Sandy McQuinley, for County Recorder.
Thank you. So what ideas do you have for making the county record-keeping system a little more efficient to save the county money?
Technology is always changing at a rapid pace, so should the recorder's office. You need to be able to preserve records that are recorded at a cost that would not be a burden to the taxpayers of Fayette County. I would attend the education classes where the changes in the law so that I would be knowledgeable as to those changes, and be open to any suggestions from the taxpayers of Fayette County, and just be a serviceable office.
Thank you. Ruth?
Well, I've discussed the budget with the current recorder and Frost, and one of the things that I see that would probably be a great service right from the beginning is to talk with the current vendors to see to study the situation and see what we might do about making online searches available. I think that would be a tremendous help to the community and to those people who are doing a search for documents if they could do it online.
Okay. That's kind of leads into my next question then.
Sorry.
That's fine. So how do you plan on making access to the records that are there in the office easier for the county residents to access as they search, the history of the property?
Right. Well, pretty much that's, like you said, I already answered that question. Because the information is not readily available online. Currently, the software prohibits that. So that would be my first order of business, would be looking at the possibility of updating or maybe going with a different software, different vendor to see what we might do to make that easier access.
Okay, thank you. And Sandy?
Hi, yes. I took a day and went to Shelby County Recorder's Office, and she was showing me their software and gave me the name of it and the name of the vendor, and it was a low cost, and she informed me that it can be paid out of the perpetual fund in the Recorder's Office, so that's something that I would look into if elected recorder.
Okay. And so kind of just one last time to say, hey, vote for me. And go with you, Sandy.
Okay, thank you. I would like to take this time to ask the voters of Fayette County to elect the most qualified candidate, Sandy McQuinley, for recorder. If elected, I will serve the taxpayers of Fayette County with the respect and professionalism that they are accustomed to. I will continue to attend education classes to stay abreast on the changes in the law. Again, thank you for having us this evening, and please remember Sandy McQuinley, Fayette County Recorder. Thank you.
Ruth?
Well, I offer a unique perspective on government service because I can see things from both the viewpoint of an employee as well as an elected official. I know that the Recorder's Office requires continuing education, as most of the offices do. Of course, that would be something that I would be doing to keep myself informed of what's going on. As a former elected official, I have management skills. I know how to prepare and manage a budget. I know how to supervise employees. I know problem solving. I know how to work together well with other departments for the common good to try to see what we can do to solve problems. I've devoted nearly half of my life to public service. That's what I do. It's what I am. I'm a professional, I'm efficient, I'm a hard worker, and I have great people skills. And I look forward to the opportunity of serving the citizens of our community. I ask you for your vote for Ruth Nutty, Fayette County Recorder. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Sandy. Let's take a few more look at some of the other candidates you'll be asked to vote for that we won't be interviewing here tonight. Everybody in the county will have the opportunity to vote for State Representative District 55, and that will be Glenn E. Bailey, on the Democratic side, and he is challenging Cindy Meyer Azimke, who is the incumbent Republican for that seat. We also have the township offices, and we start with Columbia. And the Columbia Township trustee, only one person has filed for that, and that is Addie Mustin, the incumbent Republican. Columbia Township Advisory Board, these are Democrats, and we have Alan Bunny Carey, Rosalind A. York, and Diana F. Carey. And so we will be back in just a moment with the candidates for Auditor, Fayette County Auditor, and thank you for listening. And we're back, and this time we have the candidates for Fayette County Auditor. And I've changed positions because we have 3 candidates for Auditor. And so we have next to me, Democratic candidate and incumbent, Debbie Shaw Kidd, Republican Gertrude Whitaker, and independent. And we've got an independent candidate, which is kind of a rarity, Rick Isaac. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
And so this will be your first opportunity to be able to talk to the voters and tell them a little bit about yourself and some of the ideas brief ideas you may have. And then we'll get into the questions. You're here, so we'll start with you.
Well, I'm Debbie Shaw Kidd, and I'm the current county auditor. Prior to that, I served as 6 years as county treasurer. I worked for 7 years for the city of Connersville as a community development director and grant administrator. In that position, I secured and administered over $5 million in federal, state, and local grants. Prior to that, I started my career at D&M in the office, 25 years. I worked in quality control as a statistician, which I think kind of is why I like numbers. I was also operations analysis specialist and was in cost accounting. My husband and I, we've been married 10 years, and we have 4 children together. 3 sons, Eric and Randy Kidd, and Greg Shaw live in Fayette County, and my daughter, Krista Shaw, lives in Denver, Colorado. Together then, we have 6 grandchildren. So we've got the bases covered pretty much. We've got a 2nd grader, a 3rd grader, a 4th grader, a 6th grader, and 2 7th graders. So we've got them stair-stepped right on up there, 5 boys and a girl. As a current county auditor, there have been a lot of changes just since I have taken over as auditor. We do more things online, everything from the annual report to all the budgets are done on the Gateway, which is managed by the DLGF, the Department of Local Government Finance. I was very familiar with property tax, so as treasurer, so that really gave me a leg up when I went into the auditor's office. We calculate the taxes, we pay the bills, and we're pretty much the human resource department for the county. I would like to continue another 4 years as county auditor and be a good servant of the watchdog of the taxpayers' money. Watch and make sure that it's spent according to the budgets the appropriations that are set by council. Again, Debbie Shaw Kidd, and I would appreciate your vote.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Gertrude.
Thank you, Daryl, and I appreciate the opportunity this evening to introduce myself to Fayette County and to the community. Just a little bit of background about myself as we get to know each other. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, the youngest of 3 children. I saw the American dream unfold firsthand. I'm a first-generation American. My dad came from the Black Forest region of Germany in 1958. He was going to come here for just 1 year, just to travel around, but then he met a special lady and he never left. My mother was born in Lithuania, and because of World War II, their lives, their home, their business, it was just turned upside down. They were forced to flee their country, and she and her sister were stuck in Soviet-occupied East Germany in a region called Mecklenburg, but they escaped, and through the help of 2 aunts that were in Cincinnati, they were able to travel across the Atlantic Ocean in the belly of an American Army ship as displaced persons and come to America in December of 1951. So growing up in an immigrant household was very unique for me. I saw daily the hard work that was needed to succeed in this world. And it was around our kitchen table where I learned the many blessings of living in America and being in this country, and of the responsibility of being involved in my community, and the responsibility of being involved as a citizen in the election process. After high school, I attended Evangel University and earned my Bachelor of Business Administration. I then returned to Cincinnati, where I worked full-time to pay off my student loans. I then completed my Master's of Public Administration degree at the University of Cincinnati while I was working as legislative assistant and later chief of staff to then Cincinnati City Councilman Phil Heimlich. After that, work in the private sector and the nonprofit arena, it really honed my skills to prepare me for my greatest challenge and career working as Congresswoman Jean Schmidt's district director in Ohio's 2nd District. 6 years ago, I married the prince among men, Wade Whitaker. Wade is a 1982 graduate of Connorsville High School, and we made our home here in Connorsville. And just a few years ago, we bought the house his parents, Tom and Louise Whitaker, built, and when Wade was just a child. So we now make our home in Harrison Township, and we're very proud to be here in Fayette County. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rick?
Thanks, Daryl. I'd like to thank Channel 3. I'm Rick Isaacs. Born and raised here. Married 42 years to my wife, Beth. We have 2 children, grown now. I've worked at Robertson, managed a rental yard when it was in town. Worked at Fayette Federal for 10.5 years, was a mortgage loan officer, worked in collections, and started work at the highway garage as general foreman down there until 2012, I believe. And I'm running for county auditor because I'm really concerned for the taxpayers, how the money's spent. We seem to have a problem that we claim that there's no money, and then all of a sudden there's money available to do things at a time when there's supposedly no money. Being the auditor has to do with complying with the State Board of Accounts. You have a manual from the State Board of Accounts that tells you on a monthly basis what your obligations are, and on a monthly basis for the year of what your obligations are. The auditor's office is where all the information comes across. A lot of that money seems, or a lot of that, the information seems to be stifled. We have information come across, tort claims, other things that go on inside the county that the taxpayers should be aware of. They foot the bill. So this is not mystical. I was sitting on community development when we hired Mrs. Kidd for the grant writers. So this is not a job where you have to have a lot of special talents. You need the talents of understanding the state code and applying that state code. And so I'll bring that to the forefront if I have the chance to be elected. I don't think there's any other layman in the county that is probably more versed in Indiana Code, especially Title 36. So that's your local government. I'd like to be given the opportunity to keep an eye on what goes on and take care of the taxpayers' money. And again, I'm Rick Isaacs, running for auditor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. So Gertrude, you'll be next to start it off. The auditor aids the county council in writing the budget, and the commissioners and the office holders in spending that budget. As the auditor, how would you, and maybe you do this now, I don't know, but how would you make sure you keep those bodies from overspending and say, hey, no more money? You know, some people like to spend. So, Gertrude, you start, and we'll go to Rick, and then back to Debbie.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Well, first, I think we need to make clear that the auditor, as an elected position, does have a very specific function, and it's not that of county council, and it is not that of county commissioner. So the county council and the county commission, they do have their own set of elected responsibilities where they're responsible to the taxpayers and the voters of this county of how they spend that money and how they budget that. Now, the auditor has a critical role in terms of being an advocate for the taxpayers. And one of those areas, Daryl, to answer your question, is that the auditor plays a key role in looking at the history of the budget and where money has been spent in this county. By knowing what our history is and understanding that, that can help set a tone for, are we properly spending our money as budgeted now? And also perhaps giving light to, can we move forward with either spending or not spending on projects that those other two elected bodies want to do?
Rick.
Well, the way I see the situation that we have with spending that money is once that money is appropriated, as long as it's spent within those line items that it's designated for, you're going to have a very little control over it, over how much they spend. It's all in how much is budgeted in that. And so you have a situation is that you have to rely on your commissioners to spend that money, and your department heads to spend that money the way that it's supposed to be spent. Now, the auditor's job is to keep an eye on that and make sure that they're not spending for things that's not supposed to come out of those line items. And I think that it really lies in, as far as controlling that, lies in the county council, how much money they budget and how they release that money to the people that are using that, as opposed to the auditor being able to control any of that once that money's put in the line items and is made available to the entities that receive that money. So I don't know how an auditor would actually control that, other than keeping them in line with the state code.
So, Rick, it'll be your time to go first.
I didn't answer that.
You didn't answer. I'm so sorry.
There's three
I'm
of
used
us.
to two.
I know.
Now, go answer that.
Well, as county auditor, monthly, at the end of each month, we prepare monthly reports for all of the department heads and elected officials as needed. I distribute that information to council, so council has that in front of them. They have an overall report of cash. There's cash, and then there's the budget. And so they get a cash ledger that shows what was spent out of each fund, and the revenue to the fund and the expense to the fund. As far as, I also will review the budget. I mean, I go through and review it 2 or 3 times a month. I'll review the different funds and see where we are running short. There are some things that it's hard to, like for instance, there are some things that you have an appropriation, you have a line item, and you may spend all your money out of that line the beginning of the year because it's for a contract or for something like that. So it has, in reviewing how the monies are spent too, last year was first year we had to budget separately for COIT revenues. Before, we had just added that as revenue to county general. Well, we looked at that last year. I looked at that and I thought, well, that's about $1.3 million. And what is our largest expense out of county general, which was health insurance. So I budgeted health insurance into that line, and then the council also moved and we're paying $200,000 in pauper attorney contracts from the COIT line. So this year the bad thing is, at the time we make the budgets, set the budgets, it's unknown what our health insurance is going to go up to. So you kind of have to, so this year it's just, we appropriated $1.4 million, which is just about what our COIT revenue will be, and our COIT distributive shares, and that's what we're using to pay health insurance, is budgeted $1.4 million. Well, I did a comparison because it seemed like we were running, our cash was running short, and it was. We had to take a loan from Cume Bridge in order to, of $600,000 in order to stay afloat, the cash, keep the cash, and make claims and payrolls through the next through June, which would be the first settlement. So I did a comparison. I laid that down. When we had COIT revenues coming into County General, we had much better cash flow because we weren't spending all of that immediately when it came in. So it's been more difficult, and that was set down by the state, that we had to budget those COIT revenues separately, but it really has affected County General's cash flow because of that. But
Okay. Now, Rick. I usually make that a little caveat at the start. If I skip you, make sure you speak
hey,
up.
I'm close.
Yeah, because I've done that in the past. So Rick, you kind of a little bit alluded to this, but the public often complains about openness of government in general, but also particularly when it comes to financial issues. So how can the public know more about this, what's going on financially, and even other items, what the commissioners are doing other than reading the paper, listening to the radio, or something like that? How can your office, this office, as kind of the secretary for the commissioners and the council, where a lot of the activity takes place, how can this office make it more public?
Well, thanks, Daryl. My opinion on this is that having a working relationship with your newspapers and any other entity that would like to know, what the condition of the county is, I think that all that information should be made available to them. I read an article in the News Examiner just, I believe it was on a week ago Saturday. It was talking about everybody talks about honesty and transparency, but when it gets in there, they really don't want to follow through with what they told you because of it makes it difficult. People will be up in arms if they know you're spending money on things that you shouldn't be spending money on, and so it makes it very difficult. So the only avenue that you would have is have an open door policy to anyone that would want to come in and look at the books or talk to you about that. There's information that you can't talk about being at the auditor. I mean, like you said, you're the clerk for the commissioners, which they have executive sessions, and there's things that you can't talk about. But according to public access in the Indiana State Code, we're entitled to know that information. We should never be kept in the dark about our tax dollars. And we pay proportionately. The taxpayers pay proportionally to what they have. I don't care if you're the richest farmer or the poorest person that owns a house. You pay proportionally. You pay gasoline tax, which goes to the highway department. You pay property taxes, which goes to the school and the city and the school and helps run the county and the courthouse. But when it comes down to that, you need to be, no matter how difficult it is, you need to be open and honest with the people you're serving. The taxpayer, in my opinion, is the most it's the base of everything that we do, and to keep them in the dark is just not. I mean, that's not the American way, or it shouldn't be. So I think that keeping people informed, people want to know. Reading that stuff is very difficult. This is not an easy job. But I think that you have to be open and honest with the people you're dealing with, and you have to call people out who are not being open and honest. So I think that's the way you would have to handle it.
Debbie.
It's interesting that Mr. Isaac said open door policy, because I do have an open door policy. He has come in and over the past 4 years and asked for information. He's been given every piece of information he's asked for in a timely manner. There's nothing secret about the financial information. We run the financial reports. We give that to council monthly. They will get, like before they have their meeting next week from tomorrow, they will have the information in hand from the monthly reports and what has been spent. There are certain things that, as far as tort claim notices and such, and whenever I get a call from, I've recently gotten an email from James Sprague last week asking about a couple tort claims that have been filed. And whenever there's any question about whether that is or isn't open, I call the public access counselor that works for the state of Indiana, and you talk right to one of the attorneys there, and I ask what is and what is and what isn't, because it is hard to balance that public information, which they do have a right to know, but which other things which could actually hurt the county as far as trying to negotiate on certain things. Having said that, I've always welcomed, when I was in the treasurer's office, had an open door policy. Anyone wanted to come in and sit down and talk about their taxes. I'm the same way in the auditor's office. As far as, probably it's been a few months ago, James Sprague come over, and we probably spent close to an hour discussing the budgets and discussing the financial information of the county. I've given him everything he's ever asked for as far as reports and such.
Might mention James Sprague's the editor of the News Examiner.
Editor of the News Examiner. Gave him a little plug there.
And Gertrude.
Thank you, Daryl. I spent the last couple months now driving and walking through the county, meeting residents, meeting voters, introducing myself, and listening to what the residents have to say about their concerns for their elected officials. And specifically for the auditor's office, I tried to really pay attention to what are some of those concerns, because I think, as Mr. Isaac said, it's an office where you're really in not a policy setting mode, you're following compliance issues with the state, and you're working as this taxpayer advocate. The most important thing that I'm hearing and that I know needs to change is that I will bring a culture to the government office, to the auditor's office, that is service-oriented and results-driven. We shouldn't have to wait for residents to submit written Freedom of Information Acts to get budgets and things that are already voted on and approved in public record. There should be an openness to that information. And Mr. Isaacs, I appreciate that you recognize that in your talk today, that our government does need to be more open on the local level with the money and how it's being spent, where it's being spent, that citizens have access to that. And I think that's a very critical key to the auditor's office that I want to focus on in serving all the citizens of Fayette County.
Okay.
Thank you.
One last chance. Wait a minute. Did you give?
He did. He was
Yes.
number one.
Okay. You got me all shook up.
Yeah.
Okay. Now one last chance to look at the voters and say, hey, vote for me because I'm the best. So, Debbie, it's your turn.
Well, again, I'm the incumbent, Debbie Shaw-Kidd. I did want to hit a little bit because I don't want anyone to leave here and think that I am not open with the taxpayers, and I will say that I rarely get a request for information from Open Door. I know taxpayers always say they want to know how the money's spent. It's pretty shocking in a way that more people are not present. It's public hearings when we have the budget hearings, and not a soul outside of people that worked in county government were there to listen and learn and ask questions. And it doesn't do a lot of good to say after the fact, well, I wish they hadn't done that. you know, as taxpayers, you need to be your own advocate. You need to come in and listen to what's being said at the public meetings and what's being done. I have never tried to keep anything secret. County records are open. If someone wants to come in and ask for one, they can certainly do that. Again, I feel that as a lifelong Fayette County resident and as a proven, experienced financial officer, I would like to continue to serve 4 more years as your Fayette County Auditor. Thank you.
True.
Thank you, Daryl. Our government needs a makeover. As I've gone around the county and listened to our residents speak, many of you are frustrated with the infighting and the posturing that you see currently going on that oftentimes results in not reaching goals and basically in the long run having a negative impact on our county. The election this year is about the future, not the past. And local government should not be about politics. I believe that local government is about solving problems collaboratively, together, finding efficient solutions, regardless of your party, on behalf of the entire county. We need dedicated leaders in office here in Fayette County. And you have a choice to elect leaders that are optimistic about our future and willing to go outside of their comfort zone and look for solutions that are maybe a little bit different and outside of the box. But you need someone that's willing to do the right thing every time for the citizens of this county. I'm your choice, and I do appreciate your vote this year for County Auditor. Thank you.
Thank you, Gertrude. And Rick?
Well, thanks again, Daryl. Thanks to Channel 3 for having us. And, you know, only thing I can say is Miss Kidd's exactly right. I've been in and collected information because what I got in the meetings wasn't exactly true. So I actually have information, and as everyone probably well knows, I write plenty of letters to inform the taxpayers. I'm going to tell you a little story, and this is one of the things that drive me. I'm a pretty simple guy. I graduated high school and actually worked at Robertson my senior year. And everything I've learned the hard way. I stuck my nose in the Indiana State Code and figured those things out for myself and talked to lawyers and talked to other people to try to get an idea of what we're supposed to be doing. But directly across the street from me is a lady that works in Sunman, Indiana, I believe, the old J&J battery company. It was in Brookville. And she works 7 days a week. And she leaves in the morning. I believe she leaves around 4:30 in the morning. And it's late in the afternoon when she gets home. And I'm sure she doesn't make a lot of money. And she drives 42 miles one way. And yet she pays her county option income tax and her edit tax and her local option income tax. And she pays her property tax. And that's the vast majority of us now. We're driving out of county to get the jobs, while other people in this community really pretty much take care of themselves that have pretty good jobs in government, local government, city, schools, county. And we're still footing that bill. And every time we pay money out, it's not an asset to us, it's a liability. We're supposed to be getting something back for that money. And like I said, there's plenty of those people like the lady that lives across the street from me. And so I'm concerned that we need to be watching these people and how they spend money. And when I say these people, I mean our local leaders. And I'd like to end this with the fact that to become auditor, all you have to do to qualify to be auditor is be a registered voter and live in the county for a year. That's basically your qualifications. Do you need job experience? I believe that you probably do. Like I said, I worked in banking for 10 years. I've got an idea of mortgage lending and consumer lending and debt to income and loan to values and other things. But the main thing is you've got the State Board of Accounts to determine if you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And you can't be afraid to ask those people for information that you don't understand yourself, and that's what I would do. As far as the vote, this is about the taxpayers. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about whether you're going to get the best person that's going to come in and fight for you. And I've fought for the taxpayers for years. So if you want someone that's going to fight for you, then it will be me. I'll not be controlled by a party. I'll not be controlled by anyone. Obviously, I don't have a job, so, and I would appreciate your votes. So that's about all I can say. So thanks for having us again, Daryl, and thanks TV3.
Thank you, Rick. And those are your candidates for Fayette County Auditor: Debbie Shaw-Kidd, Gertrude Whitaker, and Rick Isaacs. And we'll be back in just a moment with candidates for Fayette Superior Court Judge. And we're back, and we have with us the candidates for Fayette Superior Court Judge. Judge Ron Ertl is retiring after serving two terms in that position, so we have an open seat. And seeking those positions are, on my right, Democrat James Fraley, or Jim. I don't know how you want to go.
Please call me Jim.
Jim, okay. And he's a partner in the law firm right across the street, Weber, Fraley & Fraley. And we have Paul Freed, the Republican. He is currently a deputy prosecutor in the prosecutor's office. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Daryl.
Just might remind people that a judge's term in Indiana is 6 years, so they'll be in this position for a little while. Well, to get started with, Paul, and we'll start with you. The new criminal code approved by the state legislature over the past 2 years has really changed things. And you, whoever wins, will be administering that new law. And so could you give us your thoughts on that new code and its goals of reducing recidivism and the fear by many that sentencing, and particularly those that will be in Superior Court because they are the lower charges, will result in severe overcrowding in not only our county jail, but in county jails across the state. So, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute.
We had
I forgot to give you an opening.
I was going to say,
Good grief.
Yeah.
Opening, and then we'll do that.
Very well, Daryl. I think that's good. I'd like the people to meet me in a informal way here, and I'll let you know that my name is Paul Freed, and I emphasize that, and we'll spell it for you, F-R-E-E-D, only because the ballot this year will have a little bit of confusion in it, as there is a Freed, a Free, and a Fraley all on the same ticket, and Mr. Free and Mr. Fraley have the same first name. So make sure you know who you're voting for, I guess, is my advice to you on that. But I am Mr. Freed, F-R-E-E-D. I am not originally from Connersville, but February I will have practiced law here for 12 years, and I've become a member of the community, and Connersville's been very good to me. I was originally born and raised in Davies County, Indiana. That's the next county east of Vincennes in southwestern Indiana, which would explain the somewhat Kentucky-esque accent that I sometimes display through my paternal grandmother's Merrifield family of strong Kentucky roots, and it comes out in my speech sometimes. And being raised between the forks of the White River in southwestern Indiana doesn't help that accent issue either. As I know many of you here in Connersville also have roots in Kentucky throughout your heritage. Well, I've come to Connersville sort of as a happy accident. After having been raised in southwestern Indiana and attending the Indiana University, where I majored in government, I worked for the Defense Department as a civilian employee for 5 years as an environmental regulatory specialist. During that time, I went to graduate school and earned a master's degree in public affairs and also a master's of science in environmental science. And subsequently, in 2007, I went to law school and earned my law degree thereafter. I clerked for a judge after law school, which was a unique opportunity to see the inner workings of a judge's chambers early on in my career. That was my first real job after being licensed as an attorney. So it was quite interesting to spend time with the judge and he came to trust me and allowed me to act as a pro tem, which is a temporary judge in his court. That was the administrative law court of the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, namely the Office of Environmental Adjudication, which is the appellate court for actions that people do not like from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And if they file an appeal of an action, that it was the court that that appeal would be heard at. So a very interesting court indeed. From there, I took the advice of my mentoring judge, who indicated that I should try to get some trial practice with my next job, and I took a job with the Floyd County Prosecutor's Office, where I also was an assistant prosecuting attorney, and did indeed gain some trial experience there, and moved on to a firm in Cincinnati, Ohio, downtown at 7th and Walnut, Murdoch, Goldenberg, Schneider and Groh, which was a boutique firm that did corporate environmental law, along with class action tort litigation. So that was also an interesting experience, and I spent a year there traveling the country working for General Motors and Procter & Gamble as clients. After so many weeks on the road, I decided that wasn't the best for me, and I didn't want to have a lifetime career of traveling that much, about 40 weeks a year on the road in a consulting style practice. A friend of mine from Franklin County encouraged me to come out here, knowing that I was a small town fellow, and that I might like it, and I tried it, and nearly 12 years later, he was right. I do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Paul. So, Jim.
Thank you, Daryl, and let me begin by thanking you for moderating these debates and forum, and thank you to Channel 3 for providing the candidates with these opportunities to speak to the people of Fayette County. I also want to thank my wife, Nicole. We've been married 11 years, and she's been the backbone not only of our marriage, but of my campaign, the strength and support that I have needed to rightly express my ideas and my plan to the people of Fayette County. I'd also like to thank our 4 children, Nicole's and my 4 children, Jack, Emma Rose, Caroline, and Adelaide. They are only ages 2, 4, 6, and 8, but they also provide me with a lot of strength and certainly guidance. They also provide me with the reasons I'm running for Superior Court Judge. I have been around to many of your households over the last few months since the primary season, and I've spoken to you and I've heard many of your concerns. I share your concerns. You've told me about drugs, crime, jobs, fiscal responsibility. I share your concerns. My children are the primary reasons I share those concerns with you. I want a safer and prosperous community for my children and for yours. I started my legal career right here in Fayette County after law school. That's where I met my wife, Nicole, a couple weeks into law school. A year and a half into that journey, we were married. That's about halfway through law school, and by the end of it, after 3 years, Nicole was pregnant with our first child. We were looking for a place not only to raise our family, but start our business. Nicole, who is from Liberty originally, brought me, who is from Fort Wayne, Indiana, in Northeast Indiana originally, down here to Fayette County. She told me that the people here shared our values: family, children, hard work, fiscal responsibility. Now, those first 3 values I think all of us are familiar with. That last one was very special to me. Other communities we looked at had something that was unsettling to me and Nicole. They were showy, ostentatious. They weren't smart with their money. We didn't want to raise our children around those values. People of Fayette County are smart with their money, and even though they might think sometimes that the government doesn't always reflect that value, I know that the people share that value with me, and I will bring that value of fiscal responsibility to the Superior Court Judge's office. My children are ages 2, 4, 6, and 8, and they are thriving in this community. They go to a great school, they have great friends, the people of this community watch out for them seemingly just as much as Nicole and I do. We're very happy about that. But I also know from my experience as an attorney of nearly a decade here in Fayette County that my children, just as all children here in Fayette County, are facing dangers, particularly when they enter their teenage years. I am concerned about this, and because of that, I want to be your Superior Court judge, not only to apply the law as it's written, whether I agree with it or not, on the bench, but to influence the community with the power and prestige of the judge's office to influence change for the better off the bench. I ask for your vote on November 4th so that we can have a prosperous and safe Fayette County. I thank you.
Okay. Jim, it'll be your turn to start first, and I'll reread my question.
Thank you.
The new criminal codes that have come out, they took effect July 1st. And could you give us your thoughts on those codes? And one of the big goals is to reduce recidivism. But there's the fear by many that it will result in overcrowding in our local jails. And a lot of that is coming from cases that will appear before the Superior Court judge, whoever that may be, because some of the lower level ones no longer will be able to go to the Indiana Department of Correction. So,
thank you, Darrell. Yes, the new Indiana Criminal Code, or the revised Indiana Criminal Code, is big news in Indiana, and it's also a big concern. I know that as a resident and taxpayer here, but let me first say, Darrell, that a judge is in a unique position. A judge, as I've said already, is charged with the responsibility of applying the law as it's written, whether he or she agrees with it or not. Now, I'm not going to express my opinion about this law because of that. And there are rules against judges expressing their opinions against laws that have been enacted by the legislators that have been elected by the people. What I can tell you is you're right. It has been proposed to the people of the state of Indiana that the new criminal code will reduce recidivism. That is, it will reduce the instances of people who have committed crimes once, committing those or other crimes again. It's also been proposed by our legislature that the new criminal code will bring proportionality to sentencing. That is, the punishments will better fit the crime. And the new code does give judges, trial court judges in Indiana, a little bit of a broader range to choose from and breaks down criminal conduct a little bit more than the previous code did. I can tell you that the proof is going to be in the pudding with this law. It's a very new law, and we're going to see if it actually does reduce recidivism and whether it does actually bring proportionality to sentencing. I can tell you that the legislators who supported it believe that this will happen. I can also tell you that the executive director of the Indiana Public Defender Council has said that the law will not do this, and has even said that the state of Indiana will have to build a new prison to house all of the inmates. I can tell you again, Darrell, the proof is going to be in the pudding as to whether or not that will happen. As for us here in Fayette County, the main concern is overcrowding at the jail and costs. I can tell you that as a judge, I will work and listen to our sheriff, to our prosecutor, and do what I can within the boundaries of the law to help avoid those problems. And if it becomes appropriate on the bench to express a concern about the law, that would be the appropriate place to do so. And if that's necessary, then I will do that. But I will be watching, as all of us in Fayette County should be watching, to see if this law actually does what it's supposed to do. Thank you, Darrell.
thank you. Paul?
Yes, Darrell. As my opponent said, certainly no one can speak with authority at this point on the issue of what exactly will be the outfall of the new guidelines that came into effect July 1st. I will say this, however. The lower level felonies, which we used to have an A, B, C, and D system, now we call them levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Level 6 and level 5 being the least serious among the felonies, and would be the cases most likely to be appearing in the Superior Court, the court that we are here talking about today. The key is that in the past, sentences over a year would always go to the Indiana Department of Corrections, and the person would be assigned to a state prison. Now under the new system, at various times and under certain circumstances, those sentences of a year, you would have to keep them in your own county jail if they were convicted of that crime in your jail, or in your county rather. You would have to keep them in your jail. So the issue is, for those counties who do not have the extreme overcrowding problems that we do, this may be a good thing, because there's also the factor of state reimbursement for keeping those prisoners I was speaking of, those lower level felony prisoners. We at one time, as you may recall, some years ago, not so long ago, were actually making some money from the state of Indiana by housing Department of Corrections prisoners, even of higher level felonies, when we had some extra jail space with which to do that. That is no more. Our own native population of inmates has excluded that possibility at our jail, but now it's become something of a mandate because of the new guidelines. If the person is in that sentencing range, we will keep them in our jail. It's mandated. We may get a reimbursement from the state, but nevertheless, reimbursement or no, you still have to find somewhere to put them. And that is a real source of problem here in our county, as the jail is perpetually houses more inmates than it was designed to hold, by as much as sometimes 15–20%. So certainly I would agree that we'll have to work together with the Sheriff's Department and the Prosecutor's Office and try to come up with some solutions that are unique to the unique problems that we have here in Fayette County. We are not a rich county. We are not a suburban county of Indianapolis, a county which has excess jail space, plenty of excess tax base with which to build a lot of extra jail cells, and simply address this problem by throwing money at it. Certainly, all of us would know at this point that we don't have any money to throw at it, even if we wanted to. So I will reserve judgment for how this will work out at the local level. At the state prison level, because many people I've found out going door to door were unaware that in Indiana we have historically had what's called good time credit. If a person was sentenced to a year, they could get what we call 2-for-1 good time credit. Now, for a very long time, this has been the law. And so they would have to serve half that time. Well, that was all the way from high-level felonies down through misdemeanors, and it was 2-for-1 credit. Well, now we have an accelerating scale, and I'm not criticizing this, but it does change the game as far as the numbers go. And that is, the higher-level felonies now have to serve closer to the actual stated amount of time. Okay, 75%, 85%, and then there's a class of people called credit-restricted felons. And that affects their credit time as well. So when someone's sentenced to one of these large sentences in the future, the amount of time that they will actually physically spend in jail will be much, much closer to the number that's stated in the, let's say the newspaper article says they're getting 20 years. They're actually going to serve something much, much closer to 20 years than they would have last year had you seen that same news article. So the effect of that is you have more person days of inmates in the state prison system. It could cause them a large problem as well. So potentially a big problem for the Indiana Department of Corrections, potentially a big problem for the local county jails, especially those less equipped financially.
Thank you. Well, one of my jobs at the paper is doing the court news, and another one is doing the arrest reports. And I often see the same name over and over again on both reports. How do we stop that? How do we stop? I know the legislatures think this new law will reduce some of that recidivism, but how can a judge working with whoever in the county is available stop that where somebody appears one day being sentenced, a week later being arrested? Paul, your turn.
I thank you for that question. It's really at the very root of the problem that we have with the criminal justice system, not just in our county, but throughout the state and throughout the country, really. And that, of course, is drug addiction. There's no doubt about it. Drug addiction is at the root of most all of the crime in the county. I have sometimes, in my travels throughout the county over the summer, and I've been to more than 6,000 addresses in the county to speak to many of you. Some of you listen to this now and have already met with me on these issues on your own porch. But to recover that ground for those of you who have not heard me speak on this issue, I will tell you this. When you see a police blotter that has crimes in it that don't necessarily appear to be drug-related crimes, it's not drug dealing, it's not drug possession, it's not smuggling drugs into the jail or anything that has the word drug in it, you think, well, if it doesn't have that word in it, it isn't a drug crime. I'm here to tell you one thing for certain today. There are far more drug crimes than just those crimes that have a drug's name in the title. For example, theft, burglary, child abuse, neglect, all of these things. The list can go on and on. Frankly, if one drills down in an analysis of this person that you might be analyzing that's committed one of these cases, you will find in let's say a neglect of a dependent child case, if you drill down, and it won't take much research, you'll see quite quickly that there's a very sad story there, and it involves the drug addiction of the parent. So, as a judge, you weigh the balance of trying to certainly accommodate the safety of the child. That is going to be number one priority, no doubt whatsoever. But also, what about the long-term issues for the child, just as this is an example? You know, you have to come up with some notion of rehabilitation, try to reunification between parent and child, and issues of that type. Now, neglect charges aren't typically in the Superior Court, but it was just a good example of me trying to demonstrate to you that there are so many drug issues that are somewhat hidden behind nomenclature, behind names of crimes that don't necessarily seem like they're drug crimes, but they really are. Burglary would, of course, be the same way. By far. The reason people commit burglaries in this county is because they are unable, due to their addiction, to hold down a job. Even if they had tried to get one, they probably couldn't have, and even if they did, they would quickly lose it. And of course, then they have no money, but their addiction drives them to get money at any cost in order to purchase drugs. And so this is why we have so many home invasions in our county. So I would speak to the voter who maybe hasn't thought of this in that way before. It's important to understand that almost all the crime is drug crime in this county. If you just move one or two steps inside, peel the onion back, you will find that almost all the crime is drug crime.
Thank you. Jim.
Thank you, Daryl. Drugs are a big problem, and there's no question about that. And they litter our criminal courts in cases that are explicitly drug cases and not in cases that are not explicitly drug cases. The most difficult place that I think it is to deal with drug abuse and addiction is in our family law courts. I and my wife, Nicole, who is also an attorney, have dedicated a large portion of our practice to helping children. And that includes representing children directly, serving as a guardian ad litem, which Nicole does from time to time. But it also means helping parents who are in distress, and a lot of times that does involve a spouse or ex-spouse who is involved with drugs. Guardianship cases in my law office have increased by 200% over the last 3 years. There's only one reason for it. Non-relatives, aunts and uncles, even grandparents are coming to us and asking us to petition the court to obtain guardianship of children whose parents have been lost to drugs. This is a very serious problem in our community. And Daryl, if you've asked me how we're going to go about solving this problem, we have to do it as a community. We have to do it together, and we have to start with our children. Those who are in the grip of drug use, rehabilitation is great, and the court should always take measures to try to rehabilitate those and balance punishment with rehabilitation for those who might benefit from it. For instance, first-time offenders, young people, people who've fallen in with the wrong crowd, these may be cases where rehabilitative measures should be ordered by the court. But the truth of the matter is that rehabilitation really has to start with the person. They really have to want it. If they don't want it, then instances of relapse go up astronomically. But if they really want to get out of that lifestyle, then their chances of making it increase astronomically. What we can do is come together as a community, and as your judge, I will be a leader in the community for this, to encourage people, to lead people to want to leave that lifestyle because there's something better for them in the community. That's why the community needs to come together to offer something to people who are drug users, who want to stay in that lifestyle, persuade them not to want that. Our children, of course, are the future of our community. My children and yours. We have to catch them early, get them involved in extracurricular activities, be involved in their schools, be an involved parent. It is absolutely essential to the future of our community, to the future of our children when it comes to drugs, to get involved in their lives very early, right from the start, and remain involved. Monitor who they're hanging around. Monitor the parents of the children that they're hanging around. Find a good network of people, and soon you'll have a strong community working together to solve this problem. And Daryl, if we can do that, and I don't think you'll see the same names in the paper, it might take a while, but I believe very strongly, because I believe in the values of this community, as I've already said, that we can accomplish that goal together.
Okay. I've also seen cases where repeat offenders, particularly, shall we say, the motor vehicle cases, DUIs and such, repeat offenders come through with a suspended sentence on the second, or I don't know how many times they've been convicted. Talk about how you go about deciding whether you're going to accept a plea agreement.
Thank you, Daryl. Yes, well, proportionality is the key. Does the punishment fit the crime? And in the case of plea agreements, a judge has the responsibility to review not only the crime charged, but the facts supporting the crime charged. And so the judge can look at that and in a plea hearing, consider the veracity of those facts, whether or not they're true, and whether or not the defendant who seeks to plead guilty is genuinely, I should say, remorseful for what he or she has done. When it comes to plea agreements, the judge has the power to accept or reject the agreement that has been reached between the prosecutor and the defendant. I can tell you that I will look at every case individually. I will not make a broad policy with broad strokes that will apply to a certain category of defendants. That is not the judge's job. The judge's job is to roll up his or her sleeves, look at the facts of the case, work hard to hear what the defendant and the prosecutor have to say about this case, this particular case that's before the court, and make a determination about whether or not the plea agreement, that is, the crimes for which the defendant will be found guilty, and the ensuing sentence for that crime are appropriate to that particular case and those particular facts and charges. I have the skill and experience to look at every case individually because I've been doing it in my law firm as a private attorney for about a decade. As an attorney, you have to look at every case individually. You have to pore over it, spend a lot of time with it, and that goes even more for a judge. And Daryl, that's what I'll do. And you asked about suspended sentences too. Again, suspended sentences are something that must be decided by a judge on a case-by-case basis. I have heard a lot of your concerns about suspended sentences, and I take them to heart. I will follow the law as it's written, and the law does allow for suspended sentences in appropriate cases, and that's the key. Suspended sentences will only be given in appropriate cases, and I will take the time, and I will give the energy and do the work to make sure that every punishment fits the crime.
Thank you. Paul?
Yes, Daryl. Well, this really ties into the last question as well, which we've got into the issue of jail overcrowding. So suspended sentences, probation, community corrections, it all ties together with this notion of limited resources and how do you allocate the limited resources that you have. If you have only so much jail space, then worst first. It's a form of triage, as they say. A friend of mine who was a field medic in the Army used to say, you take the worst first, is how they decide who is going to be treated in a battlefield situation. So that is the same situation. We're in a desperate situation in the criminal environment we're in right now. As Daryl's pointed out, we've had a number of instances of repeat offenders in various crimes, including, of course, OVWIs, driving under the influence of narcotics, driving under the influence of marijuana, as well as a myriad of other smaller crimes and non-felonies. And of course, operating a vehicle while intoxicated can become a felony as well if one commits the crime a second time within a short time frame. So understand that there are mandatory minimums already in the statutes, and those must be obeyed, of course. Presently, that's 5 days for a second offense and 10 days for the third offense, but often that wouldn't be enough either. As my opponent did say, and I will agree, of course, the rules of ethics demand and good conscience demands that you look at each case under its own merits, understand all the facets of the case, and decide whether or not you would accept a plea, whether or not it included some form of a suspended sentence. Coming into that calculation, of course, is the availability of somewhere to put them if you did not choose to give them a suspended sentence. And the answer to that contemporaneously has been the Community Corrections Department. For those of you who are not familiar, we have a very nice facility. It faces 3rd Street, right behind the jail. The rear of the jail and the rear of the Community Corrections Center abut one another. It's a very nice facility, and it is touted by our state legislature, for example, going back to the first question, as one of the ways that we can deal with this pushback of prisoners to the county jails. There is a great deal of political pressure, suggestion, you might say, in a lesser term, that some of the people who historically have been put in regular jail cells in regular county jails, if they were nonviolent and deemed to be among the lesser of the dangers to the public, that they could be transferred to the Community Corrections Department, pay their own way, be on house arrest, possibly on work release, where they're released just during the day to go to work. And if that's the case, then that would be fine. The trouble is, of course, how do you assess each case in such a way that you don't make a mistake? And this is where the judge's experience comes in. I've handled over 7,000 criminal cases in my career. There is no substitute for experience in determining which case is going to be the more serious case. You can have 2 files and nothing's seemingly different but the names on the front, and one is different than the other. And this is some sense of the individual and the circumstances and the time frames involved that one develops through handling thousands and thousands and thousands of criminal cases, as I have, both as a defense attorney and an assistant prosecuting attorney. I've done this over 7,000 times. I've sat at that plea hearing that Daryl refers to. I'm in a good position as a judge, should you choose to elect me, to make that decision in a wise manner.
Well, thank you very much for your answers to my questions. Now it's time to one last appeal to the voters. So, Paul, if you would go first.
Very well, Daryl. I thank you for your consideration of my campaign as I've been going around door to door, and I've been welcomed, and I've had many lengthy discussions, sometimes stopping at a door and speaking to someone for half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, that people are very interested. People understand in this community that we're at a time of crisis. There is a crisis afoot here in our community, if left unaddressed. This is a critical moment in Connersville's history, in Fayette County's history. these elections, not just this one of this particular pair of candidates, but all the elections at the county level, city level coming up, the federal and the state, all very important. And I think voter interest is high, and that's good. I'm glad of that. I see that going door to door. What I want to tell you is this: experience matters. Experience matters in every race, not just this race, in every race. Consider carefully what you do. As Daryl mentioned at the beginning, this is a term of 6 years. It's longer than the other offices that you've heard here today. It's longer than most any other office. It's as long as a United States Senator or a state senator. You understand this is a very serious race for you to be making a good choice in. So how do you make a good choice? Well, I think that you get informed. You look at the person's background, what they've been doing for the last years of their career, how much have they done, and then look for references. Basically what we're doing here is we're applying for a job. All the candidates that appeared before this camera today are applying for a job. And as anyone knows, anyone who has applied for a job, references are required. So I would ask you, you should not hire me without checking my references. Ask people you know in the community that are close to the system, people who are likely to have seen me working through all those many 7,000 criminal cases that I've handled in this county. Police officers, any law enforcement officers you know, those are sources of references for me. Any attorneys you know, people who work in or around the courthouse, staff, employees, throughout the entire system, jailers, the entire system, okay? So check my references. I invite you to do an investigation of me because it is so important that you make a good choice. It is worth your time to investigate me. Please do that. And I ask for your vote this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Jim?
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you, my friends and neighbors of Fayette County, for tuning in for this debate and the other debates that Channel 3 has offered. My name is James Fraley, and I'm running for Superior Court Judge here in Fayette County this year. I ask that you vote for me on November 4th because I have a plan that will eliminate waste, cut costs, save taxpayer dollars. I know this because I've examined the budget for Superior Court. And while I think a good job has been done, I am a businessman. I've run my law office, not only participating as a licensed attorney in that firm, but managing the money and financial matters of that firm. And we've built it up from just a handful of clients when we started almost a decade ago to a few thousand clients over the last decade. And I am admitted to practice law in all state and federal trial courts in Indiana, and I've appeared before many different judges in many different courts. And I will bring the wisdom and knowledge that I've learned from those judges to bear, not only in my application of the law, but in my administration of the Superior Court office. I'm going to do a more efficient job for less money, and I'm going to continue to strive to do a more efficient job for less money, because that's how an office is run. That's how an office stays in the black, and that's how a judge's office properly serves the people of the state of Indiana and of Fayette County. I believe that people who deserve to go to prison should get there quickly. And while everyone should have their day in court, a good judge helps to ensure that that happens by making sure that all cases move swiftly through his court. That not only ensures that people who come to the court to seek justice don't have to wait through unnecessary delays for it, it also helps to ensure that criminal offenders who've committed offenses serious enough to deserve to go to prison aren't out walking the streets on bail, which is their constitutional right. It's often the constitutional right of a criminal defendant to have bail, but it's not their constitutional right to have unnecessary delays in their cases. I know how to keep cases moving through a court. Another problem that can happen when there are unnecessary delays is if the person can't make bail, they're sitting in our county jail, contributing to the overcrowding problem and eating up resources there. I know how to keep cases moving through an office because I've been doing it in my law office successfully for almost a decade here in Fayette County. People should not have to wait for justice, and criminal offenders should not be walking our streets on bail through unnecessary delays. I believe that our children in our community are a very important resource to us, and that we have to attend to that resource by supporting our schools, supporting our government, and that means challenging our government where it's appropriate. And I believe in the future of Fayette County. When my wife Nicole and I moved here, we moved here because of the values of this community. And I believe that despite the financial hardships that we're facing, problems with drugs and crime, problems with jobs and fiscal responsibility, the values of the people of Fayette County are still strong and will remain strong. And it is those values that will help us recover from the challenges that we face. My name is James Fraley. I'm running for Superior Court Judge. I ask for your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Well, those are your candidates for Fayette Superior Court Judge. Democrat James Fraley, Republican Paul Freed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I just want to remember, or have you remember, that November 4th is the day to vote. You can also vote early at the, take advantage of early voting that starts October 7th here at the Fayette County Government Center. And so make sure you do that. If you are physically unable, contact the clerk's office, and you can have the traveling voter board stop by your house or elderly care facility so that you can exercise your right to vote. Clerk's office is 825-1813. The candidate debate will continue Tuesday with Sheriff, Commissioner District 1, Council Districts 1, 3, and 4, and Fayette School Board District 4. This program tonight will re-air Thursday at 8 p.m. These debates will also be airing throughout the week leading up to the election. You can check localtv3.com to check that schedule. Again, thank you for listening and watching tonight, and I'm Darrell Smith from the Connersville News-Examiner, and just encouraging you to get out and vote. Thank you.